The phone hit the water and sank straight to the bottom of the pool. 6 feet down in under 3 seconds. My son-in-law dove after it screaming like the world was ending. My own daughter screamed too, but not at him. At me. Here's the strange part. 10 minutes earlier, that same backyard had watched a 64-year-old man take the worst insult of his life without raising his voice. Without a single word, while his own dinner lay face down on the concrete, sauce bleeding through the cracks in the patio. Nobody could explain how a man stays that calm. And nobody, not my daughter, not my son-in-law, not one person standing there and saw what was coming next. If you've ever gone quiet just to keep a family together, if you've ever swallowed insult after insult until you forgot you were even allowed to speak up, stay with me because this one's for you. And before I tell you how a ribeye ended up on my patio floor, hit subscribe and tell me where in the world you're watching from tonight. My name's Frank Doyle. I'm 64. I spent 34 years keeping city buses running in Columbus, Ohio. Brakes, transmissions, engines older than half the men who supervised me. I retired with a bad knee, a hearing aid I forget to wear, and grease in my knuckles that isn't ever coming out. I live in the same brick house in Westerville that my wife Eleanor and I bought back in 1990. She picked the maple tree out back. I built the deck myself, one paycheck at a time. The pool came later, 18 months of weekend side jobs so our family could swim in August. Nothing about that place came easy, and maybe that's why I never took a single brick of it for granted. Eleanor passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 13 months from diagnosis to the morning I held her hand and felt her let go. After that, Sunday dinners became the way I held on to what was left of us. Same backyard, same grill, same folding table I've refinished 3 times. I still use her rub. Brown sugar, chili powder, black pepper, a spoonful of ground coffee written on an index card in fading blue ink. Sounds wrong until you taste it. Every time the fat hits the coals, I can still see her standing beside me, stealing the burnt ends and swearing she didn't. My daughter Megan almost never missed a Sunday. 33 years old, an ER nurse, sharp and tireless, at least she used to be. Somewhere along the way she got tired of standing between her husband and her father, and she quietly stepped to his side of the line, Derek Sloan. 35, mortgage broker, a leased German SUV that cost more a month than my first house payment. I never cared about his toys. What I cared about was the way he talked to people who had less than him, especially older people. He never insulted me outright. He worked in small cuts. Frank, they make hearing aids with Bluetooth now. That truck belongs in a museum, not a driveway. Everyone would chuckle politely. Megan would squeeze my arm after. Dad, he's kidding. Maybe. But a joke stops being a joke when it always lands on the same man and never once on the one telling it. I let it slide for 2 reasons. Because I loved my daughter more than my pride, and because in her last weeks, Eleanor made me promise I'd never let bitterness empty our table. I kept that promise longer than I should have. That Sunday started beautiful. Real Ohio summer, the maple full and green, my old country station playing low from the garage, 4 ribeyes resting under foil while the potatoes finished on the coals. Megan brought her mother's potato salad recipe, close enough to make my chest ache. Derek showed up 25 minutes late carrying exactly one item, imported sparkling water for himself. He looked at the steaks. Still buying prime cuts on a pension, Frank? Bold. I smiled and said some things are worth the money. He laughed like he'd made his point for him. I let it go. We sat down. For a while it was good. Megan told us about a kid patient who'd finally gone home after months in the hospital, and I watched her light up, and for a second I saw the woman she used to be before life got so crowded. Then Derek looked at my plate. That's a lot of steak, I grinned. I've earned it. He reached across the table. I thought he wanted the sauce. Instead, his forearm swept flat across my plate. Steak, potato, corn, all of it hit the patio with a crack that stopped every conversation in that yard. My fork spun once on the concrete and lay still. Derek looked down for half a beat, then shrugged and delivered the line he'd clearly been saving. At your age, big guy, skipping a meal might be doing you a favor. Nobody laughed. Not this time. His own parents studied their plates. I pushed my chair back and stood, my knee filing its usual complaint. And I'll confess something because I promised you honesty tonight. For one strange second, my first instinct was to apologize. To smooth it over, to make the room comfortable again while my dinner soaked into the concrete. That's what decades of peacekeeping does to a man. It rewires your alarms. If you've ever caught yourself apologizing for someone else's cruelty just to get a room breathing normal again, you know exactly the wiring I'm talking about. Then I noticed his phone lying beside his glass. Brand new, top of the line, sitting there like a little trophy. While he reached for another burger, I picked it up. He frowned. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer because there was nothing left in me worth saying. I took 6 slow steps to the edge of the pool my Saturdays had paid for, and I opened my hand. One clean splash 8 feet down. I turned around and handed him back his own sentence word for word in spirit. "It's just a phone." The silence lasted 3 full seconds. Then the yard exploded. Derek sprinting to the water's edge, kicking off his loafers, staring into the deep end like volume alone could make electronics float. His mother gasped. And my daughter, my own Megan, rounded on me with her eyes blazing. "Dad, are you serious right now?" And there it was. The real wound of the whole afternoon, and it wasn't on the patio. My dinner was on the ground. 6 years of little insults were on the ground. And not once did my daughter ask if I was okay. The only casualty she could see was the phone. I got my keys off the counter. Nobody tried to stop me. Backing out of the driveway, I caught one last picture in the mirror. Derek pacing the pool deck, Megan crying, the steak still lying where it fell. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt tired. Not old man tired, the other kind. 20 minutes later on the highway, Megan's voicemail came through the truck speakers, her voice shaking. "Dad, you have no idea what you've just started." I listened to it twice in my driveway. She was right. I didn't. But I was about to learn. For 2 days, nobody came by. Nobody asked if I'd eaten dinner since mine ended up on the patio. What I got instead were 3 text messages, and I want to read you the inventory. Because the inventory is the whole story. Sunday night, you need to replace his phone. Monday morning, Dad, this is humiliating, his parents saw everything. Monday afternoon, forwarded from Derek. If he apologizes and covers the damage, we can move past this. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee going cold, reading those messages over and over, doing the math on what wasn't in them. Not one, "Are you okay?" Not one, "What happened before?" The house was quiet the way a house gets when you filled it with someone for 30 years and then suddenly, haven't. Eleanor's chair still sat across from me, same cushion, same scratch on the leg from when Megan was 7, and dragged it across the floor to reach the cookie shelf. I never could clear any of it out. Every corner of that house still had Eleanor in it. And now my own family had made me feel like a guest in the home she and I built out of overtime and secondhand furniture. By Tuesday, the internet did what it does. Someone posted about seniors who can't control their tempers. Derek's mother shared a quote about forgiveness and maturity. One of Megan's friends commented, "Some people just get mean when they get old." Mean. I turned that word over for a long time. Then I did what old mechanics do when the feelings get too loud to hold with bare hands. I found something to fix. I was on a milk crate in the garage taking apart a sticking cabinet latch when Hank Whitfield appeared in the open door. Hank, 71, retired from the water department, walks his overweight corgi twice a day whether the dog agrees or not. He'd been at every barbecue since Eleanor passed. "You busy?" he asked. I held up the latch, trying to save a $7 part from retirement. He stepped in, hands in his pockets, which worried me, because Hank Whitfield can talk to a mailbox for 20 minutes, and right now he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Been chewing on Sunday," he said. "Haven't we all?" I said. He didn't smile back. "Frank, that wasn't an accident. I watched it clear as anything." He looked straight at your plate. Then he swung. Something cold walked through my chest. Suspecting a thing and hearing it said out loud are 2 different weights. Then Hank glanced toward the driveway, took a breath, and gave me the rest. "Back in March, I was walking Biscuit past your place. Derek was out front with 2 other guys, money guys, laughing about something. I only caught one piece of it." "What piece?" I asked. And my neighbor of 22 years looked me dead in the eye and quoted my son-in-law word for word. "Once the old-timers in assisted living, that house is my down payment on the lake place." For a second, I genuinely thought I'd misheard. But we were standing 3 feet apart in a dead quiet garage, and I'd heard every syllable. My house. The house where Megan learned to ride a bike in that driveway. The house where Eleanor took her last breath while I held her hand. already itemized, already assigned, a line item in another man's lake cabin budget. He was just waiting on the vacancy. That night I sat with an old photo album, Megan at 6, missing both front teeth, Megan at 16 rolling her eyes at prom pictures, then the newer pages, Megan and Derek at Christmas, his arm around her waist, his smile installed, and me somewhere off at the edge of the frame, usually holding the camera. I ran my thumb across Eleanor's face in one photo and asked the empty room, did I miss it? Had I shrunk myself down so small trying not to lose my daughter? That I forgot I was even in my own family's picture? I picked up the phone to call her, thumb hovering over her name, then heard her voicemail again in my head. You have no idea what you've just started. I set the phone down and made the first decision in years that had nothing to do with keeping other people comfortable. No yelling, no begging, no posting. I was going to pay attention, quiet and careful, the way you listen to an engine that's about to tell you the truth. If Derek believed age made a man harmless, he'd confuse my silence with weakness. And nobody who spent 34 years around diesel engines confuses quiet with off. After Hank's visit, I stopped seeing Derek as rude and started seeing him as employed. Every compliment on a schedule, every favor and invoice waiting to print. I told no one, confronted no one. From the outside, my life looked the same. Inside, I was running diagnostics, and the pattern surfaced fast. My future had suddenly become everyone's favorite topic. Megan stopped by one Thursday with 2 coffees, and for half an hour it was wonderful. A discharged patient, my tomatoes, the squirrel raiding my bird feeder. It felt like before. Then stirring her coffee without looking up. So, have you thought about downsizing? This house is a lot for one person. It keeps me busy, I said. Your knees, Dad, the basement stairs. Then, casual as a weather report, do you still have the original deed somewhere? There it was. Not loud, not dramatic. Just placed. Somewhere, I said, easy as anything, and gave her nothing else, and watched a flicker of disappointment cross my little girl's face. A flicker I'd have missed a month earlier. The next Sunday, Derek showed up carrying wine that cost more than my week of groceries. The first gift in 6 years of marriage that wasn't an opinion. He offered to mow my lawn with his zero turn. I'm good, I said. I like mowing. And I caught it. The quick, flat glance he traded with Megan. The look married people share when a script goes off the rails. A week later, he strolled up while I was under my truck changing oil. Houses in Westerville are bringing crazy numbers right now. You could grab a condo somewhere warm. Not a beach guy, I said, and kept wrenching. Well, you won't want to maintain all this forever. I slid out and looked at him a second longer than was comfortable. Derek, I've lived here 31 years. The day I don't want it anymore, you'll be informed. His smile stiffened at the edges. That conversation stuck with me. Not because it was menacing, but because it was rehearsed. Like a listing pitch he'd practiced in the car. The following Tuesday, I had a routine appointment with Gerald Mackey, my attorney for 20-plus years, the man who'd handled Eleanor's estate. I'd come in to update a beneficiary form. Gerald finished the paperwork, then leaned back. I've been going back and forth on whether to tell you something. Your son-in-law called this office a few months back. He didn't ask about your file, he asked general questions. How conservatorships work. What happens when an older homeowner is judged unable to manage his finances? Whether moving into assisted living changes ownership of a house. My jaw was tight enough to crack a walnut. What did you tell him? The only thing I legally could, Gerald said with the ghost of a smile. Nothing. He never said your name. He didn't have to. We sat in that silence together, 2 old men reading the same page. Frank, he finally said, I don't like assuming the worst about family. Neither do I said. But those aren't curiosity questions. No, he said. They're logistics. I drove home slow that evening. Not for traffic, because every mile dissolved another excuse I'd been maintaining for 6 years. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe it's his sense of humor. Maybe Megan will handle it. One by one, gone. That night in the garage, my favorite room in the house, I picked up the framed photo from our 25th anniversary. Eleanor laughing because I'd cremated the first round of burgers. I said out loud, they think getting old means getting easy to move. The garage didn't answer, but somehow she did. Next morning I called Gerald before 8. I want to make some changes. What kind, he asked. The kind that makes sure nobody ever again mistakes my kindness for a signature. Here's what surprised me most. The paperwork was never about revenge, and Gerald never treated it that way. He asked me one question that reframed the whole thing. What outcome lets you sleep at night? I thought about it honestly and said, I don't want to punish anybody. I just never again want someone planning my life without asking the man living it. So that's what we built. Across 2 meetings and a session with an estate planner, a revocable trust and independent professional trustee, updated medical directives, rewritten powers of attorney. Every document saying the same quiet sentence in legal language. Nobody steps in over Frank Doyle because they've decided they know best. No traps, no theatrics. Just a grown man locking his own doors. And I'll tell you something strange. The day those papers were signed, Derek got smaller in my head. For the first time in months, my world grew back past him. Hank showed up one Saturday with 2 coffees and one question. You still got that 71 Chevelle in the back garage? There's a car meet in Grove City next weekend. Maybe it's time. I almost said no out of pure habit. Then I heard Eleanor clear as the radio. You're allowed a hobby, too. Frank. The following Saturday, Hank and I stood in a parking lot full of old Chevys and Fords, drinking gas station coffee while strangers argued carburetors like foreign policy. Nobody asked what phone I carried. Nobody priced my watch. I laughed more in 4 hours than I had in the previous 4 months. The week after, I started volunteering Thursdays at a non-profit garage that fixes donated cars for veterans getting back on their feet. I came home filthy every Thursday and lighter every Friday. Funny thing about helping strangers, it reminds you you're still worth something at the exact moment your family forgot. A month after the barbecue, Megan called. Where have you been? Out fishing, volunteering. A pause. You never told me. You never asked. Silence, not angry, just familiar. For 30 years, I'd arranged my life around everyone else's calendar. Now they'd have to find room in mine. One evening, I pulled a yellow legal pad across the kitchen table and wrote my daughter a letter. Not an angry one. The true one. About her mother. About how scared I'd been since we lost her. About why I kept swallowing every little cut because I believed standing up for myself was the same as losing my daughter. And near the bottom, my pen wrote a sentence that surprised even me. I never needed you to choose between your husband and your father. I only needed you to notice when someone treated your father like he didn't matter. I folded it, sealed it, wrote her name on the front and put it in the desk drawer. She wasn't ready. Maybe I wasn't either. A few days later, Hank leaned on my fence while I washed the truck. Your son-in-law's telling people you've been acting erratic. And, get this, and he's organizing a family meeting to clear the air. Neither of us believed that for 1 second. 2 nights later, Megan called, voice careful. Derek wants everyone together Saturday to settle things. Will you come? I looked out across the yard, the maple throwing its long evening shadow, the pool holding the orange sky, and I noticed something remarkable. I wasn't dreading it. I wasn't going there to defend myself or argue or audition for respect. That season was over. I'll be there, I said. Calm as Sunday. Then I made one more call. Gerald, I think it's time. He didn't ask time for what. He just said, I'll meet you there. Saturday came in warm and clear. Instead of rehearsing arguments the whole drive over, there was nothing left to rehearse. The truth doesn't need practice. Gerald met me outside with his slim briefcase. Ready? Remember, we're not here to fight. I know, I said. We're just done pretending. Inside, everyone was already assembled. Megan, Derek, his parents. My sister, even Hank invited, I'd learned, because Derek wanted him managed. The room went quiet when we walked in. Derek clocked Gerald immediately and laughed out loud. You seriously brought a lawyer? I brought a man who's very good with paperwork, I said. Megan's eyes searched my face. Dad, what is this? I believe Derek wanted to clear the air, I said. I do, Derek announced, planting himself by the fireplace, hosting his own intervention. We've all been uncomfortable since the phone incident. I think Frank, owes everyone here an apology. Frank, not Dad, not even Mr. Doyle. Funny how respect leaves a family one word at a time. Gerald opened his briefcase. Mr. Doyle asked me here because certain misunderstandings have developed regarding his estate and his future. Derek laughed once. What estate? Over recent weeks, we've completed a comprehensive plan, Gerald said, level and unhurried. A revocable living trust. One folder onto the table. Updated medical directives. A second folder. Revised durable powers of attorney. A third, and an independent professional trustee. The room's temperature changed. Megan blinked. You did all that? Yes, I said. I didn't know, she said. I know, I said gently. Derek crossed his arms. I don't see why we're discussing this. Gerald looked directly at him for the first time. I think you do. And for the first moment all afternoon, Derek stopped smiling. Some months ago, Gerald said, a caller reached my office asking general questions about conservatorships. The word landed like a dropped wrench. About how elderly homeowners lose financial control. About whether entering assisted living changes ownership of a house. Megan's head turned toward her husband in slow motion. You called my dad's attorney? Those were hypothetical, Derek said too fast. I work in real estate finance. Lots of people work in real estate, Gerald agreed. They don't typically phone their father-in-law's personal attorney to ask how old men lose their houses. Nobody breathed. Derek's father looked at the carpet, and my daughter stared at her husband like a stranger had unzipped his face. Why? She whispered. You're all making this sound worse than it is, Derek said. I was planning ahead. For what? Megan said, her voice cracking down the middle. For our future. And my daughter took one slow step backward, physically backward, away from him, and said the sentence I will hear for the rest of my life. My father's future is not your financial plan. Nobody moved. Derek scanned the room for reinforcements and found nothing but floorboards and folded hands. Then Hank Whitfield cleared his throat from the corner. I saw the plate, he said. Every head turned. That wasn't an accident. That's ridiculous, Derek snapped. Hank didn't raise his voice, where men like Hank never need to. I've known Frank 22 years, he said, looking Derek square in the eye. You looked at his plate, then you swung your arm. And into the longest silence of the afternoon, he added the rest. And I heard you back in March in front of the house. Derek's face lost its color by degrees. Once the old-timers in assisted living, Hank recited. That house is my down payment on the lake place. Megan turned to her husband one final time, her voice barely a whisper. You told me that was a joke. Everyone's blowing this out of proportion. No, she breathed. It wasn't. That's when I stood up. Not in anger. I wanted the whole room to hear this at conversational volume. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came because I spent almost 40 years building a home with my wife. I looked at Megan. I wanted my retirement to be about fishing, old cars, and Sunday dinners with you. Instead, I found myself checking whether I needed to defend my own front door. Nobody interrupted. I never cared about the phone, I said, turning to Derek. I cared that you found humiliating me funny. And I cared even more. To everyone now. That somewhere along the way I started believing keeping the peace meant accepting disrespect. I was wrong about that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was honest, maybe the first fully honest silence that family had shared in years. Gerald clicked his briefcase shut. I believe our business here is concluded. Nobody stopped us at the door. Behind me, Megan said one word. Dad. I turned and my daughter stood there with 100 sentences jammed in her throat and none of them able to move. Then she simply started to cry. I gave her a small, sad smile and walked out into the sunlight. In the driveway, Gerald asked how I felt. I searched for the word. Lighter, I said. He nodded like a man who'd seen it before. That's what happens, he said, when people put down the things that were never theirs to carry. Life didn't turn to glass and sunshine after that. I still woke at 6. My knee still complained on the stairs. Eleanor's chair still sat empty across the table. 3 days later, Megan called. I let it ring through, not out of punishment. I just didn't have the words yet and mowed the lawn instead. A week after that, she knocked. Dark circles, hair tied back fast, no armor. Can I come in? Of course, I made coffee. She sat down in Eleanor's chair without thinking, then froze. I'm sorry. It's okay, I said and meant it. Neither of us touched the coffee for 5 minutes. I didn't know, Dad. I believe you, I said. She decided to be braver than that. But that's not the whole truth. I saw the jokes. I heard the little comments. I just kept telling myself they were small. They were, I said softly. One at a time. She looked up. But together they were a direction. Her eyes filled. I should have stopped it years ago. I put my hand over hers on the table and told her the truest thing I had. You loved your husband. I still do, she whispered. I know, I said. And I love you. I know that too, she said, and cried the quiet kind of crying that comes from setting down a weight. When she left, she hugged me harder than she had in years. We hadn't turned yet, though. 2 weeks later, she was back, angry. Not at me exactly, at the wreckage. Derek says everyone ganged up on him. He says your lawyer ambushed him. I said nothing. Then the real question. Can't we all just move past it? I walked to the desk, took out the envelope with her name on it. I wrote you this, I said. She reached for it. I gently drew it back. Not yet, Dad, why? Because you're not ready. And because right now, sweetheart, you're still trying to manage everyone's pain except your own. Another month turned. The maple went gold at the edges. Thursdays still belonged to the veteran's garage. Saturdays to coffee with Hank or a car meet somewhere around the city. For the first time since Eleanor died, I wasn't passing time anymore. I was spending it. Then one cool September afternoon, a third knock. Megan stood on the porch alone. Something in her face settled. Calmer, older, cleaner. She sat down and said 2 words. I left. I didn't ask for details. She gave me the one that mattered anyway. I asked him one question. I asked if he'd have treated you that way if Mom were still alive. She smiled the saddest smile. He couldn't answer me, Dad, not one word. I closed my eyes for a second, mostly for Eleanor. Then Megan said the sentence that told me my daughter had come all the way back. I spent years calling it keeping the peace, but all I was really doing was asking you to carry all of it alone. And then she stood, walked to my fridge and pulled out a butcher paper package. 2 ribeyes. I stopped at the market on the way. If you'll let me help, she said. And for the first time since her mother died, someone stood beside me at that grill instead of waiting at the table. The coals crackled. My daughter reached for the recipe box, pulled her mother's index card, squinted at the faded blue ink. The coffee grounds go in first? Right. Your mother would be proud, I said, and my voice didn't entirely hold. When dinner was ready, she carried my plate out herself. Both hands, careful, set it in front of me, looked me in the eye, and said 6 words. Eat it while it's hot, Dad. I don't think she'll ever know the size of that sentence. Months earlier, someone knocked my dinner onto the ground to show a table full of people what I was worth. Now my daughter was standing guard over my plate. No speech, no ceremony. Just respect served warm. She and Derek divorced quietly the following spring. No courtroom fireworks, no celebration from me. Honestly, I felt more grief than victory. No father dreams of his daughter's marriage ending. But I'd learned something that couldn't be unlearned. A family cannot survive when respect only flows in one direction. These days, Sunday dinner still happens. The guest list is shorter. Some weeks it's just Megan and me, some weeks Hank wanders over or a couple of the veterans from the garage stop by after church. The table's not as full as it used to be, but the laughter is real, and nobody at it is performing. Every so often I catch myself glancing at the deep end of that pool. The phone's long gone. What stayed wasn't the splash. It was everything I finally understood after it. I used to believe protecting my family meant absorbing whatever they handed me. I don't believe that anymore. Getting older doesn't make you worth less. It just means you've finally logged enough miles to tell the difference between love and obligation. And once you can tell those two apart, friend, the whole road gets lighter. So here's the one thing I'd ask you to actually do this week, and it costs nothing. The next time somebody's joke lands on you, the same target, one more time, say one calm sentence out loud. That one lands on me, not with me. Once, no anger, just data. You'll learn everything you need to know from what happens next. And here's the question I'd leave on your table. The one I chewed on for 6 years too long. How much of what you've been calling keeping the peace is really just keeping quiet? Now it's your turn. Put a 1 in the comments if you think the phone in the pool was exactly right. One silent answer to years of noise. Put a 2 if you think I should have used words instead of $1,100 of electronics. Put a 3 if you think I waited far too long, and the real mistake was 6 years of swallowed jokes, because some nights I'd vote 3 myself. Tell me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. It still amazes me how far these backyard stories travel, and if you've ever been the one at the table that everyone's just kidding about, the parent whose kids forgot to ask if you were okay, tell me in the comments. Somebody watching tonight is rehearsing an apology for something that was done to them, and they need to hear that they're allowed to put it down.